I'm Linda, 65 years old. I work part-time at a boutique. My husband, George, is 70 and became a contract worker after his retirement. Our son, Chris, is 37 and single. After graduating from a university in another state, he returned to the town to work. He had a place of his own. So it was just my husband and me at home. Chris would often contact and visit me, but he tried to avoid his father. I wouldn't blame him. Considering his father had been abusive and had exhibited behaviors that would now be classified as psychological and domestic violence. There had been countless conflicts between my husband and me, but when Chris was very little, I was always by his side. So he was spared from being directly harmed. Of course, it must have been terrifying for him to see his mother being verbally abused and having things thrown at her. The first time Chris was verbally abused by his father was when he was in kindergarten. That day, we were expecting all my in-laws to visit us, so I was busy preparing food. My husband, who had never helped with housework or childcare, didn't lift a finger even when his guests were coming. But unusually, he said he'd take Chris to the park since he was free until the guests arrived. Apparently, Chris asked his father to take him to the park. I was a bit worried, but I was too busy to go with them, so I let my husband take him. The park was close to our house and in the neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, so I thought even my husband wouldn't cause trouble there. However, within half an hour after they left, Chris returned home alone, crying. I knew something was wrong before the doorbell rang because of his cry. Are you okay? Did you get hurt? Dad. He was crying so hard he couldn't speak. I rubbed his back and soothed him. He wasn't injured, which was a relief. My husband still hadn't returned, and I wondered where he was. Once Chris calmed down, he explained to me what happened. That was when I heard a loud bang and my husband came home. He never cared about disturbing the neighbors, no matter how many times I told him to be quiet. Although he rarely resorted to physical violence, his verbal abuse was severe, and he'd often take his anger out on inanimate objects. The reasons for his outbursts were always trivial, and it was no different on that day. Chris, who loved the swing, was first pushed by his father. But my husband soon grew bored and wanted to sit on a bench. Then, Chris' shoe came off while swinging, accidentally hitting my husband's shoulder. That made his favorite shirt dirty. First, I thought Chris might have continued playing without noticing or apologizing, but that wasn't the case. I did say sorry, but he yelled at me, over and over. Left alone at the park, he had to come home all by himself, crying. Furious, I stormed into the study, where my husband would often shut himself away. What were you thinking, leaving a small child alone in the park? What if something happened to him? Idiot. You can see the house from the park. What do you think could happen? I confronted him about not forgiving Chris and continuing to yell at him, even though he apologized, but my husband wouldn't listen to me. He insulted me and Chris, and also criticized my parenting skills. A pathetic excuse of a son, a bad mother, and so on. As I glared at him, he yelled, "What's with that look?" and started throwing anything he could get his hands on at me. Stationery scattered on the floor, his coffee cup shattered against the wall. I retaliated, throwing back whatever came my way. Running out of small objects, my husband finally stopped throwing things at me. The last thing he threw at me was his dirty shirt. Wash this now. Make sure to get mud out of it. Now get out. I left the study without a word. Who was the idiot here? I thought it was just absurd to wear something, which you didn't want to get dirty, to a park with a child. It should have been easy to imagine that, even for someone who didn't play with their child regularly. Getting angry and shifting blame for his own mistake. When I came out of the study, Chris was there, shrinking and trembling with fear, watching the situation. Mom, are you okay? I'm fine, honey. Sorry we scared you. You're bleeding. I tried to avoid getting hurt, but I had some cuts and bruises. I must have touched pieces of the broken cup. Before, I was the only target, but from then on, my husband started targeting Chris as well. He's never said anything, but I think the emotional scars from his childhood is still troubling him. As a mother, I feel terrible about it, but the fact that he grew up to be a kind person is my only consolation. To be honest, I was afraid that something awful might happen due to the conflicts between him and my husband as he entered adolescence. Every time I heard distressing news on TV, I feared it wasn't just someone else's problem. Fortunately, unlike his father, Chris was thoughtful, so we were able to avoid the worst-case scenario. As he grew older, he subtly shielded me from his father's attacks and even intervened to calm him down, which helped to reduce the frequency of the attacks. Perhaps my husband realized he was no match for Chris physically. Once I found a part-time job at a boutique and began working on weekends and public holidays, I wasn't subjected to his physical outbursts as much, though I was still getting verbally abused by him. When Chris went to college in another state, and also when he chose to come back to work locally but not to live with us, I encouraged him, seeing his hesitation. "I'll be okay. I don't think your father will physically hurt me. But still. You know I always fight back, right? So, I'll be fine. You go on and follow the path you choose. No matter what choice you make, I'll be here for you." Though I reassured him, as expected, my husband's attacks intensified once it was just the two of us. To defend myself, I retaliated when yelled at unjustly, and threw back when things were thrown at me. I wasn't going to be defeated. One day, while watching TV casually, a feature on abusive husbands caught my attention. I was struck by a sudden realization. The description of an abusive husband matched my own husband, persistently attacking my character, and always getting angry at me over trivial matters. That was exactly what my husband was like. I learned that verbal and physical abuse often go hand in hand, including intimidation through loud voices or actions, and throwing objects, and withholding money and controlling the household spending. Things had changed. In the past, unless there was direct physical attack, it wasn't recognized as violence, and many suffered in silence even when abused. It also made sense to me that many abusers acted differently in public. My husband had always been exceptionally good at presenting himself to others. I doubt his colleagues knew he was an abusive person. Some neighbors might have suspected something was going on because of his yelling, but I was sure he would just tell them that it was nothing important. And his severe attacks were directed only at me and Chris, fooling everyone else. From that day, I began to prepare for divorce. First, saving money. For the past few years, I stopped spending my part-time earnings on living expenses and started saving. So, I had enough to start a new life on my own. Fortunately, my husband wasn't aware. I anticipated he wouldn't agree to a fair division of property. That was why I needed to save as much as possible just in case. Next, since he probably wouldn't agree to a divorce, I needed to gather objective evidence for the grounds for divorce. If he refused to get divorced, it would go to mediation, and if that failed, to court, so evidence was crucial. I was determined to work hard for a favorable and quick divorce. Chris was also encouraging my independence. I told him what made me decide to divorce. I heard on the grapevine that an old friend got a late-life divorce. She moved to a big city when she was young, married a wealthy man, raised the children, and even had grandchildren. Everyone envied what seemed like a picture-perfect life. But another old friend from back home shared the truth with me. Her words pierced my heart. For years, she endured her husband's infidelity and emotional abuse. Wow. You never know what someone is going through, even if they seem happy. It surprised me, not because she got divorced, but because her situation was exactly the same as mine. Just like my husband, her husband cheated on her. And not long ago, I discovered my husband's affair. Boldly, he'd been seeing a woman who lived near our home. She was a widow, living alone. I saw my husband enter her house on my way back from work. It was like something out of a TV drama. Both my husband and his mistress came out of the house shortly after, so I quickly had to hide. Luckily, they didn't come my way and went to a nearby convenience store. I didn't know what else to do. But I texted Chris, who replied immediately. Get a few photos of Dad going in and out of the house. Don't forget to mute the camera shutter on your phone, or you can just take a video. Okay. It was early in the evening, so it was already getting darker in the countryside, as there were a few houses around. It wasn't hard to hide myself, but I had to be careful not to be seen with the bright screen of my phone. They were absorbed in their own world, making it easy for me to take photos. They came out of the convenience store with a shopping bag, walked back, and entered her house. The light in a room on the ground floor turned on. I was guessing it was probably the living room. In less than half an hour, the light downstairs went off and an upstairs window lit up. After a while, that too went dark. About an hour and a half after I first spotted my husband, he left her house. I took another photo of him coming out of the house and hurried home. They seemed reluctant to part. Later, I consulted with Chris and decided to hire a lawyer. Following the lawyer's advice, I gathered evidence of infidelity and emotional abuse, including photos, videos, and audio recordings. I also started packing my belongings so I could leave the house at any moment. Finally, the day came to confront my husband about the divorce. I hardly slept the night before, but I wasn't tired. Chris, concerned, asked me to talk with my husband on the weekend when he was off work, so he could wait for me in his car outside our house. After texting my son, I brought up the subject with my husband. "I need to talk to you." "What is it?" "I want a divorce." "A divorce? Don't be ridiculous." "I won't agree to it." "What complaints could you possibly have?" It was that loud voice of his I couldn't stand. Unfazed, I continued with what needed to be said. About the emotional and physical abuse, infidelity, and that I had evidence. That I was ready to leave immediately, and that I wanted him to discuss further matters with my lawyer. Hearing this, my husband became infuriated. "Your lawyer? Why would you involve someone else in the family matters?" He couldn't stand the idea of outsiders getting involved in our family issues. He continued to intimidate and destroy things while yelling at me. Seemingly frustrated by my calm demeanor, he persistently threw objects at me. Ouch. Suddenly, a loud noise and my husband's scream echoed. An item he threw hit the fishing rod which I cleaned the day before, causing it to fall to the floor. As he stepped on it, the rod broke. Then he slipped, falling onto his backside. I was taken aback. "What are you doing? You idiot. Don't just stand there, call an ambulance." I considered leaving him right then, but upon closer observation, it seemed he genuinely hurt himself and couldn't stand up. After a moment's thought, I called an ambulance and informed Chris. Minutes later, the ambulance arrived and took my husband away. The paramedics told me, who showed no intention of leaving the house. "Ma'am, you should accompany him in the ambulance." They must have mistaken my stillness for confusion. "No, please go ahead without me." "What?" "I won't be going with him. We're getting a divorce, so it's no longer my concern." My husband was taken to the hospital alone in the ambulance. He had fractured his tailbone and cracked his pelvis. He called me many times, demanding various things be brought to him. Out of a final act of kindness, I delivered plenty of clothes and personal items. I ignored further calls, but then had a good idea and went to the hospital when his clean clothes were likely to run out. Interrupting his tirade of insults, as he lay immobile, I made an offer. "I'll do your laundry. In return, I want you to proceed with the divorce discussions with my lawyer." He just glared at me, saying nothing. "If you don't like it, I'll leave." "Fine." While my husband was hospitalized, I rented an apartment and moved out. I spoke with my lawyer, and as expected, my husband and I can't agree about the money. However, he seems to have understood my resolve and is willing to proceed with the divorce. Chris and I keep in touch, occasionally going out for shopping or meals, and he's surprised to see the changes in me. "I've never seen you look so happy before, Mom." Maybe you're right. I'm truly enjoying myself now. There are so many things I want to do. I can go out with friends without worry. And I can display my favorite ceramics and glass ornaments without fear of them being broken. Freedom is wonderful. I'm Linda. This year, I finally entered my 60s, but I'm still full of energy. My husband and I have been together for 25 years, and we're still happily married. Our only son, Ethan, is now 34 years old. 2 years ago, he married a woman 12 years his junior, and now they live in Nebraska. Apparently, they live just a 5-minute walk from her parents' house, and since she's not good at cooking, Ethan gets treated to his mother-in-law's meals every day. When I first heard about this, I felt a bit annoyed, but Ethan seems happy with his life, and his in-laws are happy to be relied upon. Since getting married, Ethan rarely comes home, and while I feel a bit lonely, I'm also proud that he's working hard for his family. However, an unexpected event suddenly changed everything. My father, who had been ill for many years, passed away, and I inherited his land. It was quite a large piece of land. So my husband and I were discussing how to use it when we received an unbelievable proposal from Ethan's wife, Jessica, who heard about the land. Please let us build a 2-family house on the inherited land for me and my parents to live in. My husband and I were speechless at this sudden request. Indeed, I remember hearing them complain about wanting to build a single-family home when they visited us this new year. Considering they might have children in the future, I had thought about offering some financial assistance. But I never expected them to ask for the inherited land as well. It was honestly beyond my expectations. Jessica's audacity didn't stop there. Please help us with $60,000 for the down payment to build the 2-family house. She asked as if it was obvious we should help, without any hint of hesitation. My irritation only grew. Ethan, sitting next to his wife, just laughed awkwardly, acting like a stranger. We'll be able to live nearby, so please help us out. Currently, it takes an hour and a half by car to Ethan's apartment. Indeed, being 10 minutes away by car would be nice. But living with his in-laws changes everything. We couldn't visit freely, and it would be awkward for us too. Yet Jessica acted as if we should be grateful to them. Unable to immediately agree, we said we needed time to think about both building the house and providing the money, and left it at that. Not liking our response, the next weekend Jessica came to our house with her parents. Her mother immediately said, "Ever since our daughter married your son, I've been preparing meals for him. I've been taking care of him so much, why are you hesitant to give us the land and the money?" Her mother's attitude was presumptuous, as if she was doing us a favor. Jessica's father said, "We don't know what the future holds. Having a 2-family house would be reassuring, and we can help with the children. What's there to complain about? Sure, it's all benefits for them. They wouldn't have to pay for the land, and our down payment would reduce their mortgage. If anything happens, we'll all be under one roof, so we can quickly come to each other's aid. And we'll have the chance to see our grandchildren every day." We felt taken advantage of, expected to give money while they did as they pleased. "Anyway, we are building the house, so please cooperate," Jessica said and left. Shocked by Jessica and her parents' arrogance, my husband and I were speechless. Then, we started receiving persistent calls asking for financial help. My husband, fed up, subtly mentioned, "We won't give Ethan the land or the money. But I'm worried about you both, so unless we do this, we can't live nearby. Please, can't you just do what Jessica and her parents want? Think about my position too." Ethan was completely under his wife's influence. Our opinions were ignored, and they even started looking for a custom home builder. A shoe closet and a walk-in closet are essential. In addition, a spacious living room with a high ceiling and a multifunctional kitchen packed with my daughter-in-law's mother's requests as if they were just standard. There was even a study for her father and a rooftop, resulting in an extravagant 2-family house plan that left me dizzy. This is our dream house, so please give us the land quickly and help us financially. My husband and I exchanged looks, astonished by such an unreserved daughter-in-law. We could have firmly refused their request. But then Ethan said something completely unexpected, further bewildering us. "Stop dragging your feet. Just do it already. If you keep holding out, I'll cut ties with you." Ethan, who only listened to his wife and in-laws, was no longer on our side. Our dear son felt incredibly distant, and the emptiness was more profound than just him leaving the nest. Due to this, we decided to go ahead with the financial support. Of course, Jessica was the happiest. "For now, please transfer $10,000 to the construction company. We'll manage the remaining $50,000, so please give it to us in cash." I did as told, withdrawing a total of $60,000 from my account. Jessica, who hardly ever visited our house, came happily this time to collect the $50,000 in cash. She handed me various documents for the 2-family house as if exchanging them for the money. "Take these to the construction company. Make sure you transfer the money properly. After saying this quickly, Jessica left in a hurry. Later, finding some errors in the documents, I went to Ethan's apartment, but he wasn't there. I even went to his in-laws' house, but they were also out. That's when a neighbor told me Ethan, Jessica, and her parents had gone on a week-long trip to Europe. Got some unexpected money, so we're off. We'll bring back souvenirs, Jessica's mother had said cheerfully. That unexpected income was undoubtedly the $50,000 I had given Jessica. The thought that they demanded the money for a house down payment but used it for a lavish trip was infuriating. When I told my husband, he too was visibly shocked. Feeling disregarded by our son Ethan, we didn't know how to fill this gaping hole in our hearts. But we were determined not to be used anymore, so we looked up. My husband felt the same, and we immediately went to the construction company to cancel the two-family house construction. At the construction company, someone casually started talking to my husband. It was a senior employee there, and he turned out to be my husband's elementary school classmate. They had known each other for years. After reminiscing, we got to the main topic. We explained everything, and the classmate nodded, listening intently. Then, "There's no official contract yet, so no worries. Besides, the land and money are yours, so do what you like with them." This suggestion resonated with us surprisingly well. Yes, the land and money were ours. We could use the money to build our ideal structure. Once decided, things moved quickly. My husband's classmate quickly drafted a simple plan and showed it to us. In the design that encapsulated all our wishes, we finally saw a light at the end of the tunnel. After returning from their European trip, my son and his wife kept it a secret from us, so naturally, there were no souvenirs. Did you transfer the down payment? No more holding back because you don't like it. We're all adults here. Jessica frequently called to confirm the money but never bothered to visit the construction site. She's too busy with work, so please provide snacks for the workers. Don't skimp, make sure it's something good. Jessica didn't work. I was almost impressed by her audacity to tell such transparent lies. Apparently, the first $50,000 I gave her hadn't been completely spent on the European trip, as they continued to indulge in domestic travels. Naturally, Jessica's parents joined every trip. Thinking of Ethan being entirely absorbed in his in-laws' family and having fun pained me. However, my husband and I were thrilled to see our ideal building taking shape. We were extremely grateful they left everything to us once the construction started. Several months later, what was completed wasn't a two-family house, but an apartment with 8 one-room units. Yes, we canceled the contract for the two-family house and built an apartment complex for single living, aiming for rental property management. Of course, we bore all the costs. Ethan, Jessica, and her parents, who hadn't shown their faces until the completion of the building, were speechless upon seeing it. What's going on? Where's the two-family house? Jessica, shaking with anger. Her parents also yelled in outrage. Why is it a one-room apartment? We can't live here as a family. Do you think you can get away with this? This is insane. Faced with their fury, I hit them with the truth. The land is mine, the money is ours. What complaint could you possibly have? We're the ones filled with questions. And about the $60,000 assistance for the house, what did you do with the $50,000? That's the real insanity here. Jessica flinched. Perhaps feeling awkward, Jessica nudged Ethan with her elbow. Propelled by her nudge, Ethan was pushed forward to face us. To do this to your family. I'm so disappointed. We're cutting ties now. You okay with that? I was utterly disillusioned by my son, who threatened his own parents, expecting us to come begging. Sure, go ahead. We're done tolerating this anyway. Don't ever show your faces again. Ethan's face went pale at my words. You're taking this seriously? It was just a joke. Ignoring a flustered Ethan, my husband and I continued. Jessica, realizing Ethan was useless, finally spoke. Our current apartment lease ends this month. We need to find a place to live, so please lend us money. I already said it. We're done. No more help. That's too much. Ethan quit his job for this move, and we have no savings. Where should we go? Go live at your parents' house. Then we learned something interesting. Her parents were also moving out of their rented house due to reconstruction and had to leave this month. Both their houses gone in the same month was unexpected, making us smile. Do you want to live in this apartment? Oh, sorry, it's fully booked. The newly built apartment, a 5-minute walk from the station, was in a great location. The nearby station connected to many universities and vocational schools, attracting students who signed leases even before the apartment was completed. As of today, it was finished, and move-ins were starting tomorrow. You got $50,000, so find a new place with that. With that, my husband and I turned our backs on the four of them. Ethan. Stand up for us. You're the only one who can convince your parents. I've been feeding you delicious meals. Repay your gratitude. Hurry up. You love me, right? Do it for your wife you love. Although Ethan was cornered by Jessica and her parents, we didn't look back or stop. Later, Ethan came alone, apologizing deeply. I'm sorry for saying we'd cut ties. You're all I have. I was just trying to please my in-laws and ended up being cold to you. I haven't forgotten the words he said when we were hesitant to provide assistance. His irritated behavior at that time, too, was only possible because he thought it was okay to lose the trust of his own parents. His excuses now did nothing to garner my sympathy. I let him speak his mind, then told him to leave. You're my only son. How can you be so heartless? Have you ever worried about us since marrying? If you had considered us, you wouldn't have agreed to the two-family house. Pointing out his complete siding with his wife, Ethan had nothing more to say. Never show his face to us again. Not come asking for money. Not report on his current situation. Simply stay out of our lives altogether. After declaring our estrangement, Ethan left with slumped shoulders. A year later, our apartment business is doing exceptionally well. Though we're essentially in our retirement years, my husband has really taken to managing the apartments and wants to continue as long as possible. We haven't heard from Ethan since. Recently, while shopping in a supermarket in the neighboring town, I saw Jessica working the cash register, looking unenthusiastic. I was surprised to see her without her wedding ring and looking quite drab. I later heard from a mother who was Ethan's middle school classmate that Ethan divorced Jessica, groveled back to his intended-to-leave company for a job, and now lives in a single men's dorm, working. It seems that his ex-wife, Jessica, frequently pestered him for money, but Ethan, who had been submissive until then, finally snapped. After that, she apparently stopped having any contact with him altogether. After the divorce, Jessica moved to one of the oldest apartments in the area with her parents. Previously reliant on Ethan's income, she now juggles jobs at a supermarket and a convenience store. Jessica's mother is engaged in piecework at home. Her father, on the other hand, works as a day laborer security guard to support their livelihood. After the tumultuous two-family house incident, my husband and I are now living a very peaceful life, feeling blessed in our tranquil retirement. Our serene retirement days are enriched by the apartment we built, ensuring our wallet is always well filled. As someone who loves cleaning, I never neglect the weekly cleaning of the apartment. Keeping it well maintained ensures quick re-renting after tenants leave. Maintaining its clean appearance is also very satisfying. Although I regretted giving Jessica $50,000 in cash at the time, I now see it as a small price for cutting ties with her and her parents. Grateful for these quiet days, my husband and I plan to fully enjoy the rest of our lives. Even if Ethan shows up saying, "Please forgive me," I'm confident I can firmly turn him away. I don't want anyone to disturb this happiness ever again.